Welcome back. So it is time again for me to talk about the Traitors. I've watched the US, the UK versions, the Canadian version. I'm still trying to get through the French Canadian version. And I say trying because they don't have English subtitles, so it gets a little confusing, especially when I hear a name coming up a lot and I'm like, okay, so they're going to vote that guy out. Okay, I guess that's what's going on. And then they sit down at the round table and they yammer and nobody voted for him. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on. I know who's being eliminated. I don't really know why. So that's where things get a little tricky for me with the French Canadian one. Now I've also watched the Australian one, which was canceled. I'm watching the New Zealand one right now, and it is the most fascinating show to me. It's the fact that it's a game, but it feels so very personal, and it really is this psychological mess. And the one thing I've noticed every single season, every single international variety, people always overthink it. And it always throws me off just how much overthinking there is. And when they're like, well, obviously, and it's like, actually, no. No, you're wrong, actually. So they always have this death row thing. So if you haven't watched the show, the Traitors will name three people. They go on to what's called death row. There's variations of this with the international versions, but basically, those three players know that one of them is going to be murdered by the Traitors that night. And so the whole day, people are like, okay, these guys are all on death row. What's going to happen? There is always suspicion on whoever survives it. So whoever ends up surviving it, and on the New Zealand season I'm watching, that's true too. Whoever survives it, they're like, I'm pretty sure a traitor would have been amongst the three. Why? The reality is that are there times that there's a traitor amongst those three on death row? Yeah, absolutely. Does it happen every time? No, it's about half the time I think that a traitor is amongst them. So if somebody survives that was on the death row and they don't end up being murdered over the next couple of nights, it doesn't mean that they're a traitor. And if you're wrong, you're just getting another faithful out. The idea at the end of the game is you want to have just faithfuls left standing, because if a traitor's left standing at the end of the show, they take all the money. The faithfuls get to share the cash. The traitors just take all of it. They're like, thanks, and I'm gone. Which is how it should be on the mole too. But anyways, the mole is something else to talk about another time. And behavior. They always, oh, did you see the way that that person looked at this person? Oh, did you hear about how they said this? Oh, come on. And especially when they sit down at breakfast, and I'll admit it's foolish, but you'll see somebody point and go, if I was a traitor, that's who I would murder, and then they tell you why. Now, what's funny is that somebody else will go, hey, did you just hear what that guy said? He said if I were a traitor, and that guy'd get murdered, and then guess what? That guy was murdered. So in other words, they're a traitor. No, they just proved they're faithful. Nobody's that stupid. Like, it's remarkable to me that people will think out loud, and I'm thinking, okay, you shouldn't be thinking out loud and musing about being a traitor and who you'd kill next, because just no, you don't want to be doing that. People can hear you. You are making sounds with your mouth hole. You might want to stop. So yeah, behavior is a poor indicator. There's people who get nervous. Like I honestly think that if I was in a situation like this, I know I'm going to be on nationwide TV and there's cameras everywhere, I'd be very nervous. And so after they put the blindfold on and you're tapped as a traitor, you're not tapped as a traitor. After that blindfold came off, I would probably be pretty rattled. I'd be like, okay, game's on. And if I'm a faithful, I would be doing a lot of looking around, and if I was a trader, I'd be doing a lot of looking around. I would do my best to be the same either way. But yeah, the nerves would be there. And so I think if I had a tell as a trader, I'd probably have that same tell as a faithful, just because I'd be nervous. And there are times where people are nervous or, just not sure of themselves to start the game. People go, see how they reacted? Clearly a trader. Not necessarily. Voting record's unreliable, but so I started putting this up here and I thought, no, wait, there is a pattern. There is a pattern to discuss. And that's when two traders are butting heads at the table. So Bill's a trader and Mike's a trader. Mike's decided there's too much heat on Bill. I'm going to take Bill down. So at the start of the meeting, Mike's like, okay, Bill, you're a trader because. And Bill's like, oh, we're playing that. I know you're a trader because we've been working together. So they start arguing back and forth. There have been times on this show where two traders go at it and it's yelling and screaming. It's ugly. And you can tell it's trader on trader. after the meeting, people will be like, that sure looked like they were both traitors. So you get Bill out. He goes over and he goes, yeah, I'm a traitor. But what happens is Bill votes for Mike. Mike votes for Bill. Traitors will vote for other traitors on the way out the door. It's kind of their way of saying, well, I know I'm not going to win, so I don't want them to win either. And they'll throw another traitor under the bus. That does happen. That's where the voting record comes in. But with the faithfuls, I mean, on the New Zealand season that I'm watching, I feel awful for Noel. Noel's a 22-year-old kid. He's kind of in over his head. He doesn't know how it. He's like, it's just a game. Who cares? And people are really mad at him for that. Like, it's not just a game. He's like, it is though. It's a game. But to some people, it's not, because when you sit down at the table and you're talking about banishment, it gets personal, because people will take shots at your personality and the way you behave and the way you talk and all that, and it can get really personal. So when this kid who's 22 years of age is like, this is just a game, for somebody who's double the age of the kid, they're probably like, I'd rather he wasn't here. He's not taking this seriously. Or they assume he's a traitor. And in Noel's case, there are people who assume he's a traitor. I feel bad for Noel too, because they're bringing stuff up. And so this is a good segue into this. People don't let go of things. So something will happen on day one. I mentioned, you take off the blindfold and you look kind of nervous. Somebody picks up that I'm nervous after I take off the blindfold. I'm a faithful. I'm good. But they're like, Shannon's behavior changed after. He looked really nervous. I don't think he's comfortable. I think he's a traitor. And then they never let it go. So 3 or 4 episodes later, after it looked like we hashed all that out, people bring it up again. Well, remember on day one? And my assumption on this has been they don't have anything else to go on. So the people in the game who are still traitors are doing a really good job of hiding it. And so now people just circle back and go, well, remember when we were on his trail? Why don't we go back on that again? Because I don't have anything else to go on. So I end up feeling bad for people that happens with. And it's frustrating. And I understand their frustration too. Because to them, it's like, I already dealt with this. I already answered why I was behaving that way. We agreed I wasn't a traitor. We went after somebody else. Why are you coming back after me again? And the reality is that in this situation, this scenario where you're in a fishbowl, you're going to get paranoid. You're probably only going to trust 1 or 2 other people in the game at most. And everybody else you're suspicious of. It is absolutely bewildering to me. One thing I noticed too in the New Zealand one was these 4 guys all like, well, we're going to make it to the end and then decide what happens from there. If a traitor heard them say that, they're not making it to the end. No chance. None. So, yeah, that's where that's at. And then misspeaking. I mentioned before, there have been times where somebody's gone, well, we traitors, or they make, an offhanded comment about who's not going to make it to the morning, and they're making conversation. It's awkward conversation, and sometimes they're saying things that they shouldn't. And again, I'll say to the TV, they should really shut their mouth hole, because they're looking pretty bad. And so misspeaking happens. Next thing you know, they're being sat at the round table for banishment, and everybody else is like, well, remember when you said that weird thing with traitors and you put we in the sentence? Clearly, you're the guy. So out you go. And then they stand in the circle of truth and go, actually, I'm a faithful. And they're like, oh, seriously, it's a faithful. Why didn't we see this coming? Because, again, you get that tunnel vision. Somebody misspeaks. And you want to jump on it because maybe the traitors are doing too good of a job of hiding and covering their tracks. And the obvious one is likely a faithful. So one thing that every single season of Traitors does, and I absolutely get why they do this, and if I was a traitor, I would do the same thing. So let's just say, like, for the French-Canadian one, Miriam. Miriam made a bad impression the first episode, so I had no doubt in my mind she was not going to be on the traitors list the first few episodes, because she's seen as being a little bit off-kilter and a little bit... She gets upset and excitable, and then the other problem is, for her, the people she suspects of being traitors are not traitors. So she can sit there and yell and scream and get mad all she wants. The traitors are going to keep her around because that really noisy one that other people look at and go, it's pretty obvious it's them, I think. You want them to be there, because the louder that obvious person is, the less eyes are on you. The more you can relax and know that that one person is going to be out there and they're going to take the heat. The thing with that though is usually the obvious ones go relatively early, because in this show very often the first few people that get banished are the ones who just don't fit in with anybody else, which has to be frustrating for people who don't fit in with everybody else. I've had the debate internally of, okay, how long would I actually last on this show if I was on there? I don't know that I'd last that long. I think that just the fact that people can misspeak and the nerves and everything. Plus, I'm older than almost anybody else that would be on the show. Pretty natural that you're the one that's gone. Usually, the older people on Traitors don't necessarily last that long. So, obviously, there are exceptions, but usually those people either get, the axe or they get thrown out. So, if you're really good faithful and nobody suspects you, you're gone. That's the weird part, is that the Traitors go, well, this is a clear faithful, so they got to go. Everybody knows they're faithful. We got to get rid of them. So the way you play this game is through paranoia, and just there's a little bit of blind luck. The one part that's interesting to me is that every single season of the Traitors, they keep their friends around. They keep people around that they like. I think it's a bad strategy overall, because in the end, if you're a traitor, you have to stab them in the back. You have to look them in the eye and say, I'm a traitor. Your money's mine. We can still talk, though, right? We're still friends. I don't know that that works. I have seen reveals at the very end. So when there's just 2 or 3 people left, and they're like, all right, we're going to stop the game here. And one person goes, I'm a traitor, so I'm taking the entire cash pot. And it can be like $100,000 or more. Like, it's life-changing amounts of money. And so it has to be hard if you're faithful to look at somebody that you've played this game with the whole way, looks and goes, I screwed you over. I had you snowed. It has to be a frustrating experience. And it is part of the reason why I find the show so endlessly fascinating. Because when I'm watching these Traitors eliminating people, keeping guys around that they're pals with and people they trust, you're going to stab them in the back. And the longer you keep them around, the worse it's going to get when you do it. So it is a fascinating show for me that way. I'd be interested to know your thoughts. I do know that I've been reading that The Traitors is now the most popular of the reality shows in the world. It's taken over from like Big Brother, Survivor, and all of them. The Traitors is now the number one, and it's a murder mystery game. Essentially, it's a bloated murder mystery game that goes on for 10 episodes, and I just find it endlessly fascinating. I would say I'm the only one, but clearly because it's quite popular, not the only one, and it's enjoyable to watch. And for all of the conversation pieces that are out there, and for all the amount of times that I've talked about violence, used violent language, there's absolutely no violence on the show. So it's kind of fun that way. And honestly, I think it's a good class in how mistrust can form very quickly. And when you get like 3 people who are all faithfuls, nobody's a traitor amongst them, and they're all pointing the finger at each other and raising their voices and getting angry, it's fascinating to watch that, because all of them are being honest, completely honest, and none of them trust each other. It's really fascinating. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Which one's been your favorite season if you've watched multiple versions from around the world? The ones that I named off, those are the only ones that I have access to from where I am. So there's that. I don't have access to the one from Holland that started all this, which is kind of sad. But, at some point in time, I figure I'll have access to all of them, because it is a global phenomenon. I just had to drop that eraser, didn't I? It's part of the reason the erasers are almost never on here, because they tumble right off because I have so many bloody markers. But there you go. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. It is greatly appreciated. Really excited about my upcoming trip, but I wanted to talk about this today. So here we are talking about Traitors. Thanks again for all your support. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I will talk to you again soon.